Are you telling me you couldn't spend less than $1 million on two conferences, right? Like, did you really have to spend 95 grand on a dinner reception, $1,300 on musical spoons, or get this, right? This is under the NATO conference. They spend $10,850 on scarves for delegate bags.
Franco, the federal government held two conferences over in Montreal that cost taxpayers $1 million. Can you set the table here? What was going on? What were these conferences all about?
Yeah, so the government held two conferences in Montreal in 2024. The total cost of those two conferences was more than $1 million. Okay, so absolutely outrageous tab, $1 million for these two conferences. But Carson, as crazy as that tab is, honestly, it's really some of the individual spending that we dug up that is crazier for me. Like the government spent $94,900 on a dinner reception. Okay, almost 95 grand on a dinner reception. Another dinner costs $79,000.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So it's like well over $100,000 on two dinners.
Those are two dinners. Yeah. $198,000 for lunches and breaks. We'll get into that in some more detail in a second, but 198 grand on lunches and breaks. Carson, they spent $1,300 on musical spoons for a dinner show.
Sorry, Franco, do you know what musical spoons are? Because this is the first time I've ever come across this.
Well, yeah, my dad used to kind of do some musical spoon plays for me. You know, he'd just grab two spoons, start banging them off his hand and off his knee. Like, I remember watching my dad do that when I grew up. So, look, I mean, it was $1,300 on musical spoons for a dinner show. Look, I don't know why you got to spend $1,000 on spoons. You could probably just grab a couple spoons off the dinner tables, and there you go. Let me give you three more items. Carson, they dropped $915 on flower arrangements. Okay, more than $10,000 on scarves for delegate bags.
Yeah. You gotta have the merch, Franco. You can't go to one of these fancy conferences without coming back with a merch bag, can you?
Yeah, and speaking of merch, they also dropped 2,500 smackers on lapel pins. There you go.
Were they literally gold plated? Because like I've had to order lapel pins for the CTF before, you know, our little taxpayer pins. They do not cost that much money.
No.
Like that is a very, very affordable little piece of merch to hand out. It shouldn't be costing taxpayers thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Okay. So let's break down each of these conferences. So again, like I said, there's two. The first one, I'm going to butcher this, Carson. You're much better with French than I am. Sorry to everyone out there. But it was the annual session of the Assemblée Parlementaire de la Francophonie from July 5th to 8th. Yeah, from July 5th to 8th of 2024. The entire conference cost taxpayers $631,000. Right. So a couple day conference somehow ends up costing taxpayers 631 grand. They spent over $150,000 on accommodations. There were 18 staff, that billed taxpayers more than $3,000 each on accommodations, which means that those staff alone, those 18 individuals, cost taxpayers an average of $750 per night for their hotel rooms. Right. So like,
Franco, we've stayed at hotels in Montreal together during conferences. We had a great time. We were not dropping $750 on each room. Like, Montreal's a big city. There's a Holiday Inn. I know that for a fact. There are other hotels that would set taxpayers back a lot less than $750. And folks, this is exactly the kind of places government should be looking for savings. Like, this is the lowest of the low-hanging fruit when it comes to saving taxpayers money. Don't stay at the 5-star hotel. Maybe a 3-star will do for the bureaucrats.
Well, you bring up a good point, because like as we go through these records, what it strikes out as me is that no, these government bureaucrats are looking for ways to spend taxpayers' money as extravagantly as possible, right? They're going out of their way to just blow taxpayers' cash. Here's another crazy thing that happened at La Francophonie, this conference in Montreal. So the hospitality costs were $357,000, but many bureaucrats also billed taxpayers for their per diems. right? Their daily allowance.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's the classic double billing, right? They take money from taxpayers in per diem that's ostensibly supposed to go to cover things like their meals. Well, at the same time, they're at a conference where taxpayers are buying their meals. So they're robbing us twice, essentially, for these kinds of expenses. Is that kind of what's going on, Franco?
And the per diems, these daily allowances were more than 20 grand. Was the total cost to taxpayers. The total cost, not each individual bureaucrat billing us 20 grand. No, like the total cost of the per diems on top of the hospitality bill was 20 grand. Speaking of hospitality, again, here's where we get into the musical spoons. Okay. So it included within the hospitality bill, you had $14,000 for quote artistic performances for a quote cultural dinner. And also this is where you got that $1,300 billed for musical spoons. Now, again, like I don't know what's crazier, that they're spending $1,300 on musical spoons when you just grab a couple spoons off the dinner tables. There you go. But also too, like in the records, I wish it came with like a picture of the musical spoons or a description. It doesn't. All we know is that they got the musical spoons off of Amazon.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the supplier was Amazon.
Of dollars on musical spoons from Amazon. Like this wasn't like they were going to some local First Nations artist who like hand carved these. Well, they ordered them from Jeff Bezos.
I don't know who ended up making them. We don't know that. We just know that the supplier is Amazon. 2 more points, Carson. So the dinner itself, right, was catered by this, I don't even want to say their name. I'm just going to butcher it. But anyway, it was catered by this catering company. It cost taxpayers $79,000. The company refers to itself as, quote, creator of gourmet emotions.
Oh, yes. Because why feed our bureaucrats when we can create gourmet emotions for them?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. The last part of this conference spending for this La Francophonie conference spending that I really want to dive into is is the lunches and breaks, right? So the government spent $198,000 on lunches and breaks for 475 delegates. It was the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth Hotel that catered the lunches. We did some digging, and the hotel offers a $60 per person group rate for lunch. Okay, so $60 per person for lunch. Now, listen to this. There's a keg just across the street of this hotel. Okay, we went on the keg's lunch menu. The most expensive item on that lunch menu was a 12-ounce New York strip loin for $51. Okay, so the government could have literally taken every single person out to lunch to the keg, ordered the most expensive meal on the menu, and it still would have saved taxpayers money. Like that's how you know that the government was just going out of its way to spend your money, my money, everyone watching money as extravagantly as possible.
And sorry, Franco, I should have cleared this with you beforehand, but do we have the actual menu? Do we know what they were eating? No. Because so all of this stuff was posted on like the government's online financial disclosures, right? So you don't get the menus. It's not like what we did with the access to information requests. You just kind of see the total amount, a very, very short description, and then who supplied either the food or in Amazon's case, the musical spoons. Right. So for the folks at home, there's 2 big ways that our team usually comes across these waste stories. One of them is proactive disclosures. Government, and it depends on the province, depends on the city, depends on the federal agency and department. But for the most part, they have to post these big kind of expense reports. So whenever they spend big taxpayer money, they need to post it proactively online. Now, that gives just sort of brief descriptions, broad overviews. It doesn't really get into the weeds. The other big way we get information is through these freedom of information and access to information requests. That's when we ask government for specific documents, like the Governor General's airplane catering bills, for example. So there's different ways you can kind of skin the cat when it comes to getting these big picture receipts and invoices from the bureaucrats and politicians who like to waste taxpayer money. Now, Franco, is that all you had on the La Francophonie assembly? Because there was another meeting. There was another meeting, wasn't there, that also set taxpayers back big money.
Yeah. So the other conference that we looked at that happened in Montreal last year, November 2024, was the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Okay, so they had this big conference. The total cost for this conference to taxpayers was a little over $400,000. which is like obviously just crazy, right? I mean, first of all, it's a conference for a couple of days, right? The conference time was November 22nd to 25th. So you're only looking at like less than a handful of days. The total cost was more than 400 grand. And then you get like a whole bunch of big ticket spending items, right? Like the transportation costs for 54 grand, accommodations, $63,000. But then you get also into like the question marks, like why are they wasting money on this? So the total hospitality bill was $250,000. Now,
okay.
In addition to the hospitality bills, you also had per diems again being expensed to taxpayers. The total amount expensed through per diems was $21,000. So similar to what we just talked about for La Francophonie conference. Now, I want to talk about the dinners because the total cost of the dinners was $134,000. But and it's because of this. There was a dinner reception that set taxpayers back nearly $95,000.
A $95,000 after dinner reception.
Well, now, dinner reception. Yeah, dinner reception.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean,
it's more than what the average worker makes in an entire year. Right. So you have these two dinners that we highlight from both these conferences. Right. So the one dinner at La Francophonie conference was the one dinner was what, $79,000. OK, yeah. This dinner reception for the NATO Parliamentary Assembly conference was $94,900. So both of these dinners or dinner receptions at these conferences, whatever you want to call them, both of these, the government billed more for each individual dinner than what the average Canadian worker makes in an entire year.
Right. So normal families couldn't dream of spending this kind of money. But the politicians and bureaucrats, I was about to say in Ottawa, in this case in Montreal, had no problem sticking taxpayers with these outrageous bills.
But folks, let me just clarify, and maybe I should have said this off the top, oopsies, but this is all federal government spending, right? So this isn't spending that just impacts people who live in Montreal. No. This is Canadian taxpayers' money. This is federal government expenses, right? So every Canadian from every province or territory was billed more than $1 million for these two conferences in Montreal.
Right. So if you're listening to this from Red Deer, Alberta, from Armstrong, BC, from wherever in Canada, you paid for these outrageously expensive Amazon musical spoons. You paid for this expensive dinner reception. You were on the hook for all this expenditure. And Franco, I think that actually brings up a really good question. Do we know what Canadian taxpayers actually got for this? Like, was this worth the cost for you and I?
Well, no, it's not worth the cost, regardless of what we got out of this, because look, here's the major point. Like the government can host a conference and not spend more than $1 million on these two conferences, right? Like you can, and that's the thing, like, are we saying the government shouldn't have conferences? Well, look, in some cases, I'm sure there's cases out there where like, yeah, the government shouldn't be hosting that conference. It's more just a waste of time than anything. But even if the most, important things came out of these conferences, right? Let's just, okay, granted, whatever. But either way, there's, you telling me you couldn't spend less than $1 million on two conferences, right? Like, did you really have to spend 95 grand on a dinner reception, $1,300 on musical spoons, or get this, right? This is under the NATO conference. They spent $10,850 on scarves for delegate bags.
Yeah,
right. So so either way, right. Even if the greatest thing happened from these conferences, I haven't heard anything coming out of these conferences. But even if that was the case, they are still looking for ways to spend other people's money as extravagantly as possible. That's the issue.
Right. And I think you hit on something so important there, Franco, right? There are times when bureaucrats and politicians need to meet, right? I get it. It happens. But when they do, they owe it to every taxpayer to spend our money as responsibly as possible when they do. Maybe that means no $10,850 on scarves or $2,540 on lapel pins, right? Like there are ways to save taxpayers money even if the conference is super important, even if you need to fly to Montreal to have a meeting, you need to save taxpayers' money while you do it. Is there anything else you want to add about the second NATO conference, Franco?
Well, let me just end on 2 points. And because I think we've kind of gone through all of this. Folks, if you want more details, check out taxpayer.com, check out our newsroom tab. It's all there. But let me just end on 2 things. So number one, I just want to say thank you to all of the tax fighters out there, all of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation supporters, because it's your donations that allow us to do this. I mean, our investigative journalists, we got a lady by the name of Jen, and she is just fantastic. She spent hours and hours and hours pouring through these financial expense disclosures to tally all this up, to dig up the waste. And quite frankly, nobody would know of this spending outside of government if it weren't for the investigative journalism at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. And the only reason that is even possible is because of your support, the tax fighters, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation supporters out there. So, I mean, this is just a great example of how your support helps push the needle in the right directions, hold government accountable, and just increases government transparency. People wouldn't know about these costs if it weren't for the supporters like you. The second thing I'm going to say, okay, look, so all this happened in 2024. So this is not on Prime Minister Mark Carney, right? Like, let's just be as fair as possible. Mr. Carney was not the Prime Minister when all this happened. Okay. However, Mr. Carney is the Prime Minister now, right? Mm-hmm. And he's told Canadians, now I'm very skeptical, and there's many videos on why I am, that he's going to look for savings, cut waste, right? That's what Carney has said with his mouth. Well, guess what? These types of examples, these crazy spending at conferences, as you mentioned, Carson should be the first thing on the chopping block. So you can't blame Carney for this spending. This happened in 2024. This is before Carney became Prime Minister. But we sure can. Whoops. Watch it. Yeah, we sure can hold Mr. Carney accountable if and when we find receipts in the future of similar type of conference, hotels, accommodation, hospitality spending. So you know what? A little shot or a little warning at the current government. You better clean this mess up. You better cut this type of extravagance, because we are going to find it, and you will be held accountable if we find you spending money like the government did on this kind of stuff in 2024.
That's right, folks. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is your watchdog with teeth to hold the government accountable when they blow big money on things like musical spoons. Franco, thanks so much for joining us today. And folks, this is Waste Watch, a spinoff of the Canadian Taxpayers podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below.